Today, welcome to the biggest GT-only race in the world. Let's get ready to finish our month of 24-hour racing with a bang. Hop in, buckle up, and get ready to lay it on the line. This is Not Speeding, Just Qualifying, a podcast that's just as fast as it sounds. Hello, family. I'm David Lawrence, and welcome to an all-new episode of the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast. I appreciate you for joining me today. Before I get started, make sure your qualifying setup is dialed in and ready to go for pole position. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel or search Not Speeding, Just Qualifying in the podcast section of the YouTube Music app. Subscribe to us today. As always, we start our show with this week's in-lap. In Sector 1, a new winner in Formula E. Round 12 of the championship in Jakarta, Indonesia Saturday was a festive and entertaining affair. Andretti Porsche's Jake Dennis led away early from pole, but when challenged by Nick De Vries, the Mahindra driver chopped off the Brit. De Vries was handed a penalty for his shenanigans, but could not serve it as he fell out of the race. The Cooper hero of Dan Ticktum inherited the lead when the Dutchman fell out, a lead he would not relinquish. Ticktum became the 24th driver to win in Formula E history with his first career win on the streets of Jakarta. Formula E returns in a few weeks with a doubleheader in Berlin. In Sector 2, it's the sailing 6 hours at the Glen, and it had just about everything. Bad weather? Check. Heavy crashes? Check. Lamborghini leading GTP during the race's middle stages? Yep, we had that. And of course, there was field strategy producing a nail-biting ending. But to give you the brief of it all, the race was a battle between Acura and Cadillac. The number 31 wheeling Cadillac was primed to take the victory, but poor Earl Bamber was one lap short on energy. The number 60 Meyer-Shank Acura of Tom Blomqvist made the energy last to give he and Colin Braun victory. The second straight for Meyer-Shank Racing and Acura in GTP. In LMP2, United Autosports held off AO Racing for class honors, while Paul Miller Racing and BMW topped GTD Pro. And in GTD, the number 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus ran out of fuel in the boot about a mile and a half from home, handing victory to the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin. IMSA's back July 13th with their one Canadian round of the championship at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, formerly known as Mosport. Finally, in Sector 3, let's stay with sports car racing. Let's talk the Nurburgring 24 hours, which at the top of the table was a battle between Porsche and BMW. After a lengthy delay for a power outage in the early stages of the race, the road racing BMW and the Manthey Porsche went back and forth for the lead throughout the 24. The decisive moment of the race, however, came in hour 19. Around 10:20 a.m., Kevin Estre made contact with an SP10 class GT4 Aston Martin, sending it into the wall, flipping the vehicle, ending on its roof. All of this happening in front of the then second place BMW with Raffaele Marciello at the wheel. The incident resulted in a 1 minute 40-second penalty handed down on the Manthey Porsche from race control. Because of this, despite finishing 22 seconds behind Porsche on the road racing and BMW with the driving quartet of Kelvin van der Linde, Raffaele Marciello, Augusto Farfus, and Jesse Krohn win the 53rd 24 hours of the Nurburgring, a record-extending 21st win for BMW in the race. That completes our in-lap weekend motorsports review. As we closed our in-lap with the Nurburgring, we're going to keep on moving as we have reached the final leg of our month-long 24-hour journey. As we mentioned last week, we started the month in Japan with the Fuji 24 hours. Then we flew across to Europe for the famed 24 hours of Le Mans. From Le Mans, we hopped on a train to the Eifel Mountains of Germany and the Nurburgring. Now come with me and let's take a short car ride across the border to Belgium, where nestled in the Ardennes forests lies a world-renowned motorsports treasure, steeped in history, iconic in stature, and revered by drivers both for the challenge it provides and its inherent dangers beyond its walls. We are focusing on the Circuit des Spa-Francorchamps and the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa. Like the Nurburgring in our last episode, this story begins in the early 1920s. Out of the ashes of World War I, local Belgian province newspaper owner Jules Détier wanted to host a race in his local village. In a meeting with Joseph de Croix and Henry Lengua Van Oppen, the decision was made to use the roads connecting the villages of Francorchamps, Malmedy, and Stavelot before returning to Francorchamps in a triangular-ish layout. The public road layout measured at just under 15 kilometers or 9.3 miles. After holding its first race in 1922, Détier and Van Oppen were inspired by the first 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1923. In a timeless example of, if they can do it, so can we, Détier and Van Oppen approached the Royal Automobile Club of Belgium, who helped organize that 1922 race, and together fleshed out the idea of their own endurance race. The first 24 Hours of Spa actually took on the Belgian Grand Prix, or Grand Prix de Belgique title, but the race is not included in the Grand Prix history books, as the first official Belgian Grand Prix took place in 1925. Despite the fact, on July 19, 1924, 27 entries took the start. As was custom at the time, a driver and a mechanic would cohabitate a vehicle. However, the race had a quirky rule that said the mechanic had to stay in the car the whole 24 hours while the drivers would swap out. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun if you're a mechanic. At least there were fireworks at night, according to the Royal Automobile Club of Belgium's history books. The all-French team of Henri Spinguel and Maurice Paquet survived the rain and fog to complete 1,872 kilometers, or 1,163 miles in their 2-liter Bignon to write their names in the history books as the first Spa 24-hour winners. And remember how I said the Spa 24 Hours was inspired by the Le Mans 24 Hours? How about this for a story? The same team that won the first Le Mans, André Lagache and René Leonard, and their Chenat Wakel, won the second Spa 24 Hours 2 years later in 1925. In 1927, the homegrown brand Excelsior won the race, the brand's only win before being sold off in 1929, which led to the Excelsior name eventually disappearing. And that car also helped the first Belgian-born driver to win the race in the form of Nicolas Cairels. It did not take long for the race to gain international recognition as a race where Europe's best car makers could come and test their mettle on a fast-flowing yet dangerous track to both man and machine. Through its sports car era, all the big manufacturers tasted success at Spa. Alfa Romeo, Bugatti, Mercedes-Benz, Aston Martin, and Ferrari all found outright victory in the Ardennes. But boy, did this race have its fair share of adversity. Economic hardship in Belgium saw the race canceled in 1934, 5, and 37. World War II canceled the race, of course, from 1939 to 1947. The Spa 24 Hours did return in 1948 and 49, but to lackluster car counts, which prompted the Royal Automobile Club of Belgium, or RACB as I'll refer to it hereafter, to not hold the 24 Hours in 1950 and focus on shorter races. The 24 Hours did return in 1953 as part of the inaugural World Sports Car Championship, with Giuseppe Farina and Mike Hawthorne scoring victory for Ferrari. Unfortunately, just like 48 and 49, the entry count for the race was low, and due to low interest, the race would be left off the calendar for the 1954 World Sports Car Championship season. This time, the race would go dark for another decade. Fast forward to 1963. Belgian Le Mans champion turned journalist Paul Ferret and RACB's Hubert de Halle, apologies if I'm butchering so many Belgian names here, by the way, began laying the groundwork to bring the Spa 24 Hours back to life. The result of their efforts was the return of the race in 1964 as a strictly touring car race to set it apart from Le Mans and to mirror the popularity of touring car racing at the time in Europe. By 1966, in an effort to attract manufacturers, the race would become a part of the FIA European Touring Car Championship, a distinction the race would hold on and off until the championship's demise after 1988. It's also worth noting the race would be held as part of the World Touring Car Championship in 1981 and 87. During this touring car era, the X brothers, Pascal and Jackie, would find success on home soil. Pascal's co-driver in his victorious 1965 effort would be Gerard Langlois Van Oppen, son of the race's co-founder. The Martin brothers, Philippe and Jean-Michel, became household names in this era. They won the race together back-to-back in 1979 and 80. Jean-Michel in particular would associate his name with this race as its first four-time winner. And if you are a current follower of sports car racing, you are familiar with Jean-Philippe's son, Maxime Martin, who followed in the footsteps of both his father and uncle and was part of the winning team in 2016. Jean-Philippe's third win in 1987 was a passing of the torch moment as he would share his winning car with a first-time overall winner by the name of Eric Van der Poel. It would be Van der Poel who will eclipse Martin over 20 years later as the Spa 24 Hours winningest driver when he won his fifth overall crown in 2008. Backtracking to the late 1980s and after the death of the European Touring Car Championship, Group N and Super Touring regulations would keep the race primarily touring cars throughout the 1990s. During the touring car era, as they did with the Nurburgring, BMW was the car to have. During the touring car era, the Bavarian brand scored 21 wins, including 2 runs of 5 wins in succession. BMW still holds the record for most wins by a manufacturer with 25, over 3 times as many as the next winningest manufacturer, Porsche, sitting on a mere 8. As the world entered a new millennium, the Spa 24 Hours saw it was time for a change. Enter Stefan Rattel, whose organization, the Stefan Rattel Organization, better known as SRO, was promoting the FIA GT Championship. With the series shifting away from the 90s GT1 era and without a true signature event, all the events being 500-kilometer or 3-hour affairs, the SRO approached the RACB as both sides saw opportunity in each other. For 2001, the Spa 24 Hours would be integrated into the FIA GT Championship and became an enduro for GT cars. And as the saying goes, the rest is history. Today, the Spa 24 Hours is now regarded as the world's biggest GT race, still promoted by the SRO as its blue ribbon event, now part of the GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS and the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Which brings us to this year's race. And to help me preview this year's 24 Hours, I've called upon someone who is no stranger to this race or to this series. Let's not waste any time. Here's part 1 of our conversation. We are getting ready for the 78th running of the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa. And to help me preview this year's race, I wanted someone who was close to the action. And my God, I have gotten just the guy. His resume includes covering series such as the British GT Championship, British Touring Car Championship, and the Asian Le Mans Series, just to name a few. But for the sake of our conversation, he is the lead commentator for the English World Feed for the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa and for the GT World Challenge powered by AWS. Welcome to the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast, Mr. David Addison. David, it is a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for the time. How are you doing today, sir?
David, I'm doing well. And you're making me feel tired already talking about 24-hour races because I'm only about 3 days back from doing another one in France. So I was at Le Mans and I came back on Sunday night, and then I had an event to do at Silverstone on Tuesday, which was a really exciting day. It happens every year. It's an organisation called Supercar Driver, and they have lots of their members on track at Silverstone with their road cars, but they have some motorsport demo sessions. So we had some Le Mans cars and GT cars of years past, like the Le Mans winning Bentley Speed 8, they were there. Awesome. We had Audi R8s from Spa 24 Hours. We had Silk Cut Jaguars from Le Mans. So, it's a busy time of the year, but it's a great time of the year because after Spa, I do the commentary at the British Grand Prix, and the week after that, it's back to British GT and then GT World Challenge Europe, and on it goes. So,
I was literally just about to ask the question. I love it's the British Le Mans Roll of Honor. You mentioned the Bentleys and the Jags because I literally love watching the 88 Le Mans on repeat, getting ready for Le Mans every year. But you kind of went into a little bit of it, but tell me a little bit about how did you get here? How, like, a little bit of a career in a mini.
Okay, motor racing fan, nothing like it in the family. Was taken to the nearest racetrack to where we live in the northwest of England. We're near Manchester. It's a place called Alton Park, and I was taken there when I was 5, and I cried because it was noisy, and I didn't like all that noise. And now people cry because I make the noise. And my parents thought, okay, well, we've taken him for a day out. That might go nowhere. And then all the toy cars came out and were pushed around the floor, and I was making car noises. I discovered or realized from a really early age I didn't want to be a racing driver. I wasn't brave enough. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the commitment to try and find the money. All I wanted to do really was to get in for free at Alton Park and have a good view. And I thought sitting in a commentary box would give me a better view. And because we're in England, where it rains, I thought I'd be dry. To me, seemed like a great idea. So that was the extent of my ambition, really. And then I did start commentating in the UK, doing the track commentary. And then that grew to doing some television stuff on highlights of British races, and then TV at Le Mans, and I did some stuff in Australia, and it sort of bubbled along a bit. And then if you want to tie it in with SRO specifically, I went to Jarama outside Madrid back in 2010, 11. And there was a single-seater championship in Europe for a few years called Super League, and it was motor racing, but all the cars were branded as soccer teams. Yes. Our version of football, not your version of football.
Hey, I still use it. I still say football.
And the support race for Super League was what was then called the FIA GT3 European Championship, which was an SRO category. That was being televised as well. And the guy that was there from SRO looking after TV said, if I give you a few dollars, if you like, would you commentate on it? And I was more familiar with the GT side than the Super League side. So I seemed to do a reasonable job. He then said, can you come and do the Spa 24 Hours, which I could. And that year's Spa 24 was outside of any championship because we had GT1 World Championship in those days. So all the top cars were doing these 2 1-hour races. So SRO came up with this kind of catch-all 24-hour race for GT2 and 3 and 4. And that was the catalyst, because it was a good grid, for Stéphane Rattel to launch what was the Blancpain Endurance Series. And they said to me, well, you were here at the beginning, if you like, for the kind of pilot race, that 24 hours. Do you want to come and do Blancpain Endurance? So I did the Blancpain Endurance Series, and then that's gone through all of these different changes to give you the, as you say, the GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS Endurance Cup, and we've got the Sprint Cup, and we've got GT World Challenge Asia and America and Australia, and we've got Intercontinental GT Challenge. So thanks to that link with SRO, they keep me busy because I've got a race in Suzuka later in the year. I think I'm going to China. I've done quite a few in Asia over the time as well. And I love it. It's a real contrast from my 20-minute blasts of touring car racing, which is coming up this weekend for me. So it's a really different type of racing, and there's more of a story, as you can imagine, over whether it's an hour or 3 hours or 6 or 24. So much more can happen.
And it's right in your backyard at Olton Park this weekend. How about that? But no, I can relate to your story a little bit, Dave, because like me, like you, my family, no racing ties, not even trying to even think about it. I found NASCAR, of course, our natural racing at the age of 6, and
Sure.
then my late father, he started taking me to many places. They
Okay.
would bring cars to, like, the local establishments, and
Mm.
I just fell in love from there. But I love the story. I love hearing people's stories and opportunities about these things. So that is absolutely amazing. So as you mentioned, Spa 24, that's how you got your big break. That's how you land in SRO. It is the blue ribbon event of the organization of GT World Challenge Europe, the Intercontinental GT Challenge. And it's also a unique race. It's the only 24-hour race in the world that is GT3 cars only. We got everybody: Mercedes, Corvette, Aston Martin, Porsche, BMW, Ferrari, Lamborghini, McLaren, Audi, amongst others. 76 cars, the biggest since the race became GT only. But even though we only have one classification or regulation, SRO, of course, as you know, has 5 classes within the race. They are Pro, Pro-Am, Gold, Silver, and Bronze. For those listening to the podcast that are not familiar with SRO or just new to this race, can you break down each of those classes and what makes them different?
Okay. Pro is pretty straightforward because largely they are the professional paid drivers, whether they're paid for a living by the team or by the manufacturer. And there are only 3 of those allowed per car, whereas the other cars in the other classes can have 4 drivers, and that really is where you're expecting the winner to come from. Pro-Am is pretty much what it says. The drivers are largely amateur-based. You can have one gold or platinum in there to help the car up the order. And that's we only have Pro-Am at Spa. We don't have Pro-Am in the other races, and that's just another opportunity, really, to try and open the doors a bit wider and let people come in. It's not quite an invitation class, but it does bring more people in as a one-off. The gold class is for, and this is where it gets desperately complicated, gold and silver graded drivers. Now, there's a sort of sliding scale of how many golds and how many silvers you can have to make up the car. But in short, your gold and silver classes are the next generation of GT Star. These are the young guns. So the Gold Cup allows you to run a gold with silvers. The Silver Cup is all silver graded drivers. And what it does is give those drivers that are on their way up the GT racing ladder something to fight for. And Gold Cup drivers in particular can be really impressive, as we saw last time out at Monza with, for example, Joseph Loke, new to GT racing this year. Now, the Bronze Cup, the regulation there is in normal endurance rounds that you only have to have one bronze graded driver. What's a bronze graded driver? Somebody who's not done very much racing or hasn't achieved great results as yet. But you can, of course, have a platinum driver in there with you. So in the past at Spa, we've had a Bronze Cup car qualifying on the front row of the grid because you put the higher graded driver in for the qualifying session, the Super Pole, and boom, there he is up at the front of the grid. The driver gradings are done by the FIA, the governing body of the sport. They're based on your experience, your results, your lap times, and constantly the teams are looking for what you might call a ringer. They're looking for somebody who is really quick but lower graded, so he can sort of sneak in under the radar, and then eventually he's spotted and he gets upgraded. But what it does give us, as you rightly suggest, is that we've got 5 races in one. We've got all these different battles. So there's obviously the overall situation, but you're looking at what's happening in gold and silver and bronze and Pro-Am. And actually, the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa is also a round of, deep breath, Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli. And that's another race within the race as well, because some of the entrants are in that. They'll be coming to Indianapolis later in the year as well for another IGTC round. There's the Nurburgring 24 Hours happening for them this weekend. So, there's an awful lot to stay on top of. You're trying to process all of these different drivers, different classes, and what that means in a championship. Is that car battling with that car for points? Is it battling on track? But where is it? That's an IGTC car, that's IGTC and World Challenge Europe. Right, so there are points there for position. So this battle matters in that championship, but it doesn't matter in that. There's a lot to stay on top on, that's for sure.
Definitely. And I thank you so much for breaking down the driver range because I know some people might have been hearing it and was like, wait a minute, what is the driver range? Basically, the four levels bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Platinum are the pros, bronze are those who really just do this with their day job on the side to kind of.
Now, you're thanking me. I should thank you because you yawned with your mouth closed, and that's impressive because I know all these driver gradings can get really complicated. So, yeah, you did well there, David.
Thank you. That was part one of my preview interview with Mr. David Addison. And we had so much content from that conversation, I had to do a second part. So come on back tomorrow for more of the David and David show as we continue to preview the 2025 Spa 24 Hours. Before we go today, just a quick reminder to connect with the pod on social media, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok, all at the same handle at NSJQ Podcast. Lastly, make sure you subscribe to our show so you don't miss whenever we drop new content for the pod. YouTube at NSJQ Podcast. Type the Not Speeding Just Qualifying Podcast on YouTube or in the podcast section of the YouTube Music app. We will talk to you tomorrow for another episode of the Not Speeding Just Qualifying Podcast. Until then, I'm David Lawrence, and remember, you're not living life to the fullest until you're going flat out. So long, everyone.